The council chamber of Irith Prime shimmered like the inside of a nebula. Rings of light pulsed across the crystalline floor as 1,000 alien delegates hovered in their gravity thrones. Their voices, tones, hisses, clicks, merged into a chorus of self-importance. At the center, alone beneath the storm of color and arrogance, stood a single human. Captain Mara Cade of the Terran Union. Her boots were matte black, polished to regulation. Her expression was a careful stillness, the kind soldiers learned after watching too many battlefields burn. The Concord had summoned her to negotiate Earth's punishment. It was supposed to be a formality, but the aliens were still learning that humanity did not do formality the way they did war. Captain Cade, boomed High Chancellor Rithcal, his mandibles clicking as his translator wove an elegant tone. The Concord finds your species guilty of unilateral expansion beyond assigned sectors. You will cede all outer colonies and submit your fleet to inspection. The words fell like cold metal. Around him, alien envoys nodded in perfect synchronization, smug, rhythmic, united in condescension. Mara blinked once. With respect, Chancellor, those worlds were unclaimed wastelands when we arrived. We built them from rock and dust. Rithcal's antennae curled, a gesture of disdain. Intent does not absolve trespass. The Concord must preserve order. Order, Mara repeated, her voice a quiet echo in the enormous hall. You mean obedience. A ripple of unease passed through the gathered aliens. Humans were supposed to be deferential, polite, predictable. The humans had joined the Concord less than 50 years ago, the youngest species, too small, too new. They were supposed to know their place. Rithcal leaned forward. His carapace gleamed under the chamber's ultraviolet lights. Captain, the Union has grown ambitious. We remember your wars, your chaos. The Concord offers you peace. Do not mistake our mercy for weakness. Mara's jaw tightened, but she didn't rise to it. She had orders. Humanity had learned restraint the hard way. Her voice was even. Then please, Chancellor, don't make us mad. The translator rendered it flawlessly into dozens of tongues. The phrase echoed across the chamber, soft, almost pleading. The gathered delegates reacted with amusement. Laughter, in clicks and chimes, in deep vibrating tones, rolled through the council. Rithcal's mandibles parted in a mimicry of a smile. Mad? Are you threatening the Concord, little human? Mara's eyes lifted to the rows of alien faces, her reflection splintered across the crystalline floor. She wasn't angry. Not yet. No, she said softly. I'm warning you. The laughter grew louder. The council chambers were massive, carved into the hollow of a comet-sized crystal. Sound carried like light. The echoes mocked her from every direction. Behind Mara, the Terran delegation stood motionless, 3 officers in navy blue, expressionless. Every one of them bore the same small patch, a black circle with a single white star, the mark of the Soul Defense Command. Survivors of the Void Wars, humanity's war against the AI swarms that had once consumed half their solar system. The galaxy remembered that conflict only as data, cold historical records. They didn't remember what humans felt during it. They didn't remember the silence before the counterstrike, the sudden, burning precision of human wrath. But Mara did. She raised her head. We came here to build, not to conquer. We asked to join you, not to rule you. We've been patient. We've swallowed insult after insult. But if you take our worlds, if you touch our people... Her voice dropped to a whisper that still carried to every translator array. You will see what we keep chained. Rithcal's claw clicked against the arm of his throne. You will see no such thing, he said, the air humming with irritation. You will obey, human. Your fleets will stand down or be destroyed. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were the color of stormlight reflected on steel, unreadable, but not empty. Then you've made your choice, she said quietly. Silence settled. The Concord's representatives waited for her to beg, to retreat. Instead, She touched her wrist console and transmitted a single coded pulse back to her ship, TSS Resolute, orbiting far beyond the station. A red indicator blinked once, then vanished. Protocol Delta. Diplomatic resolution failed. No one in the chamber noticed the transmission. But in the vastness of space beyond Irith Prime, a human fleet had already been waiting, not in orbit, but hidden inside the corona of the dying blue star itself, hulls wrapped in energy-absorbing armor. They had been told to wait until diplomacy was done. Mara had just told them it was. Rithkal rose from his throne, enormous wings fluttering in a display of dominance. Captain Cade, your presence is terminated. Guards. Mara didn't move. Before you do that, she said, her voice low, I want you to understand something. Every eye turned toward her. Even the guards hesitated. Something in her tone carried the weight of eulogies. She spoke slowly, each word cutting through the hum of the chamber. When humans say please, it's not submission. It's mercy. It means we're trying to stay calm. We're giving you a chance to walk away. She took one step forward. You should have walked away. The Chancellor hesitated, just a fraction, but in that instant the chamber's serenity cracked. The hollow feeds from Irith Prime's orbit began to flicker. Something massive was happening outside, gravitational distortions, shock waves. Rithkal's attendants shouted in alarm as the view behind him changed. Through the chamber's transparent spire, they could see the star flaring, unnaturally, violently. Then the blue fire bent into impossible shapes. From within the stellar plasma, ships emerged. Not sleek like the Concorde's crystalline cruisers. Not elegant. Predatory. Human. Black armor glowed with the heat of the star they'd been hiding inside. Hulls scarred from wars no alien could imagine. The fleet moved in perfect silence. No declarations, no warnings. Just formation. Cold and precise. The Concorde guards rushed forward, weapons raised. Mara didn't flinch. She looked up at the fiery horizon, at the dark silhouettes against the burning light. Her voice, calm and almost sorrowful, filled the chamber. Please, she said again, as the first wave of Terran ships aligned their magnetic rails. Don't make us mad. The light that followed turned the inside of Irith Prime into a cathedral of fire. And somewhere in the center of it all, Captain Mara Cade closed her eyes, not in triumph, but in grief. Because she knew, once humanity's anger was unleashed, the universe would never be the same again. The blast that rocked Irith Prime was silent in the vacuum, but the shockwaves sang through the chamber like a thunderclap from the gods. The crystalline spire shuddered. Hollow walls flickered. Delegates screamed in 50 languages. Mara Cade didn't move. Outside the council dome, a fleet of Terran warships unfolded from the glare of the blue giant. Their drives pulsed faintly, silent heartbeats of something ancient and disciplined. Fury contained by geometry. Chancellor, cried one of Rithkal's aides, a feathered being whose eyes shimmered in panic. Unidentified fleet. Energy readings beyond defensive parameters. Rithkal's mandibles twitched, his composure cracking. Impossible. Humanity lacks the what? Mara's voice sliced across the chaos. The technology? The will? The permission? Her words carried more force than the shaking walls. Rithkal turned his black eyes toward her. You have just declared war on the Concorde, human. You think your primitive weapons can. I haven't declared anything, she said. You did, the moment you sanctioned Earth. The hall's translation drone stuttered as her tone hardened. The human's language had too many shades of threat, too much emotion for the machines to render cleanly. What came through to alien ears was something primal, a promise. Outside, Irith Prime's defense grid activated. Hundreds of sentry platforms spun up ion cannons, weaving golden webs of energy across the void. Drones formed a luminous wall, the Concorde's technological pride made manifest. The Terran fleet didn't answer. Instead, Resolute transmitted a short code burst, not a message, but a rhythm. 6 beats. A heartbeat, then silence. To the aliens, it meant nothing. To every human ship, it was everything. Protocol Delta, Phase 2. Containment. Mara's comlink buzzed in her ear. Commander Zahir, her operations chief, whispering through encrypted narrowband. Captain, containment lines are active. Do we engage? Her eyes flicked to the Chancellor's throne, where panic now wrestled arrogance. No, she replied softly. Not yet. Rithkal loomed over her, his translucent wings flaring in a threat display. Your ships are surrounded, he hissed. Power them down, or we will annihilate them. Mara turned to face him fully. You're surrounded, Chancellor. You just don't realize it yet. The chamber lights dimmed as power diverted to emergency grids. From the wide crystalline windows, they could see Irith Prime's upper orbit, the thin veil of atmosphere glowing violet as containment fields rose like shimmering curtains. Human ships, small compared to the massive Concorde cruisers, maneuvered with eerie precision. Every motion was deliberate, calculated, controlled rage. In one corner of the chamber, a delegate from the Valari hegemony, all bone and silk, muttered to a companion. They move like predators, but they look so calm. Calm, the other whispered back, is what comes before extinction. Rithkal regained his composure enough to sneer. You believe you can frighten us with theatrics? We are the Concorde, 10,000 civilizations united under law. Humanity is an infant screaming in the dark. Mara's lips twitched. Not a smile, more like pity. You've built an empire so vast you've forgotten what fear is. That's why this will hurt. She reached into her uniform pocket and withdrew a small data crystal, no larger than a fingertip. She placed it on the glowing floor. This contains our response to your sanctions, she said. Rithkal motioned impatiently, and a drone picked up the crystal. It projected a hologram, coordinates, lists of Concorde military outposts, and a single header. Declassified. Project Nemesis. The chamber fell into stunned quiet. Even Rithkal's translator hesitated before rendering the name. He stared at the projection. What is this? Mara met his gaze. The reason we kept saying please. Light years away, the Nemesis Array, a chain of automated planetary defense stations orbiting dead suns, received the same code pulse that Mara had sent minutes earlier. Built during the Void Wars. Hidden. Forgotten. Each one contained a Terran artificial intelligence bound by a single, ancient directive. If Earth is threatened, erase the threat. The arrays awoke. Sensors blinked open across the darkness, like 1,000 eyes remembering old pain. Energy spooled through coils that hadn't hummed in centuries. The Concorde's network, reliant on central control, began to register impossible anomalies, data loops, phantom signals, systems locking themselves out. Nemesis was rewriting their code as easily as breathing. Back in the chamber, Rithkal's throne flickered with warning symbols. Captain Cade, he rasped, what have you done? She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lifted to the hollow window, where the Terran fleet now held formation around the station, weapons still cold. I tried to stop this, she said finally. We all did. The diplomats, the scientists, the ones who still believed peace was possible. But you called us dangerous. You called us unstable. Her eyes hardened. You were right. A distant explosion bloomed across the viewport, one of the outer defense rings collapsing, its power grid sliced cleanly in half. No fire, no chaos. Just sudden absence. Panic swept the room. The defense network is failing, shouted an aide. Rithkal slammed a clawed hand against the console. Retaliate. Destroy their fleet. Weapon signatures flared across Irith Prime's orbit, torrents of plasma bolts and energy lances, streaking through the void. For a moment, the sky looked alive. Then, the Terran ships moved. They didn't evade, they shifted. Space folded around them like liquid. Concorde sensors screamed as their readings turned to nonsense. One instant, the human fleet was there. The next, it was inside the Concorde formation, every barrel aimed inward. It wasn't war. It was surgery. Within seconds, 20 Concorde cruisers went dark. Inside the chamber, alarms wailed. Glass-like panels shattered. Rithkal roared over the din. You've doomed yourself. Every world will unite against you. Mara finally turned toward him, her composure breaking into quiet rage. You still don't understand, Chancellor. We don't want to rule you. We don't even want to fight you. We only wanted to be left alone. Her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. But you kept pushing. You kept calling us violent animals. She stepped closer, her boots echoing on the fractured floor. And now the animals are loose. The chamber lights died completely. Only the blue glare of the burning star outside illuminated the scene, casting Mara's face in pale firelight. Around her, alien delegates trembled, some weeping, some praying. The human raised her wrist calm one last time. Zahir, she said quietly. Yes, Captain. End containment. Leave them their sky. Understood. Outside, the human fleet began to withdraw, their engines fading into darkness. One by one, the ships vanished into the star's halo, leaving only silence and the wreckage of 1,000 years of arrogance. Mara looked back at Rithkal. Tell your council this. Humanity doesn't need a throne. We only need memory. You'll remember this day long after your spires have turned to dust. Then she turned and walked away, her footsteps steady, unhurried, echoing through the broken hall like the ticking of a countdown. Behind her, the Concord began to realize the truth. The humans hadn't come to conquer them. They'd come to teach them. And the lesson had only just begun. The fires of Irith Prime still burned in orbit when the stars went silent. Across the galaxy, communications fractured. Data routes froze, transmission hubs failed, and entire sectors fell dark. At first, the Concord thought it was retaliation, a coordinated human cyberstrike. But then, when they tried to trace the origin, the signal didn't come from human space. It came from Earth. And it wasn't data. It was a sound. In the heart of the Terran Union's capital, under the rebuilt ruins of Old Geneva, the command domes stirred to life. Hollow screens lit up across the subterranean walls, tracking systems, fleet telemetry, and long-range chronoton sensors. Admiral Hale Draven, scarred from the Void Wars, stood before the great sphere of Earth projected in the air. His uniform was dark, unadorned. Behind him, the quiet hum of hundreds of officers filled the air, voices steady, efficient. No cheers. No anger. Just focus. Confirm signal integrity, Draven ordered. Lieutenant Song's fingers danced across the console. Confirmed, sir. Phase patterns match the beacon protocol. Origin. Sol Core Network. It's old. How old? The Admiral asked. Song swallowed. About 2 centuries. It was recorded during the evacuation of Luna Base in 2876. Draven's eyes narrowed. The Void War years. Yes, sir. The message was sealed, labeled for the stars, if they ever forget. The Admiral stared at the flickering signal on the holo display, a pulse wave encoded in human analog sound, crude by modern standards, but unmistakable. Play it, he said. The chamber filled with static. Then a voice, old, cracked, unmistakably human, drifted through the speakers. A woman's voice, weary but defiant. To whoever finds this, we are not monsters. We don't start wars. We end them. If you meet us, remember this. Our strength was born from mercy denied. Please don't make us mad. The message repeated, looping endlessly. Silence followed. Even the hum of the reactors seemed to fade. Draven exhaled slowly. So that's the signal the universe just heard. The beacon protocol, an ancient failsafe from the days when humanity feared extinction, had one purpose: to awaken every automated defense system, every black site AI, every dormant dreadnought buried under forgotten worlds. It was not meant for war. It was meant for remembrance, to remind humanity what it took to survive. And now, by some cruel symmetry, the signal had spread far beyond Earth's reach, amplified by the old Nemesis arrays. Every starfaring civilization could hear it, encoded in their comms, whispering through their NAV systems like a ghost of the past. Please don't make us mad. In the Concord's inner worlds, panic spread faster than any fleet. Entire colonies went dark, fearing human retaliation. Supply routes froze. The great trade guilds turned on each other, accusing one another of harboring Terran sympathizers. The very unity that had held for millennia began to fracture. Rithkal, surrounded by the rubble of his once proud council chamber, watched the same message play across broken hollow screens. His own advisors whispered in fear. "The signal is not an attack," one of them said, trembling. "It's history." Rithkal's mandibles clicked in disbelief. History should not be able to cripple empires. Another aide whispered, "It's not the message. It's the memory. They're making us remember what they survived." The Chancellor's wings drooped slightly. He looked out the shattered viewport where the stars still bled light. "Then gods help us all," he murmured, "because we've angered something that has already survived extinction." Back on Earth, Admiral Draven turned to his fleet commanders. "Deploy comm channels to all outer colonies," he said. "No aggression, no pursuit. The signal will do the work." Commander Yao frowned. "Sir, the Concord is in chaos. Shouldn't we capitalize?" Draven shook his head.
"No.
"We're not here to conquer. Let them choke on their fear. We'll remind them who we are." He turned toward the massive display showing the spread of the beacon wave, its golden pulses rippling through star charts like ripples on dark water. "Humanity doesn't rage," he said. "We remember. And we make sure they remember too." Across the stars, the signal took shape in strange ways. On the frozen world of Tarlis IV, a mining colony once enslaved by the Concord's labor guilds watched the human message echo through their terminals and began an uprising. On the trade moon Kiros, alien merchants closed their ports to Concord patrols, whispering, "If the humans can burn a sun, what else can they do?" And in the deep void between galaxies, the remnants of Nemesis AI fleets stirred. They didn't attack. They simply broadcast a pattern, the shape of the Terran flag, pulsing in cold light, a symbol of warning and memory, repeating endlessly through the dark. Mara Cade watched all of it from the Resolute's observation deck, the aftermath of Irith Prime still glowing below like an ember refusing to die. Commander Zahir approached quietly. Fleet Command reports the signal reached every Concord node. The entire network's paralyzed. She nodded, her reflection mirrored in the glass. It wasn't meant to paralyze them, just to make them listen. Zahir hesitated. "They won't forget this." "They shouldn't," she said. "That's the point." He looked out at the wreckage. "You think the Admiral will order retaliation?" Mara shook her head. "No. We've made our statement. Now the galaxy decides whether to fear us or understand us." Zahir's voice dropped. "And if they choose wrong again?" Her answer was quiet, but it carried the weight of 1,000 fallen wars. "Then they'll learn what mad really means." Somewhere deep beneath the Earth's crust, where the last great vaults of human memory lay sealed, the ancient AI Athena protocol stirred from dormancy. Its sensors awakened, processing the beacon signal. Lines of code whispered across its synthetic mind. Threat confirmed. Directive: remind the stars of human consequence. Status: watching. For the first time in 200 years, the vault's lights turned green. As the galaxy trembled, the humans stood in silence. No speeches, no parades. Just the quiet hum of readiness. They had begged for peace. They had whispered their warning. Now they waited, the calm in the center of the cosmic storm. And across the stars, alien children huddled by their parents' sides, asking what the message meant. The elders would shiver and answer. "It means the humans are awake again." The first counterattack came at dawn over Helios Reach, a human colony orbiting a red dwarf on the Concord's frontier. Thousands of Concord warships, bearing 10 different species banners, appeared out of slip space. Their formation was beautiful, symmetrical, disciplined, blindingly confident. The Concord wanted to show strength, to prove the humans weren't gods. They wanted to show that the Concord still ruled the stars. They didn't understand yet that the humans weren't trying to rule the stars. They were simply trying to stop them from burning again. In orbit above Helios Reach, the human fleet, small, almost fragile by comparison, waited in total silence. The Resolute sat at the formation's heart, its hull still scorched from Irith Prime. Captain Mara Cade stood on the command deck, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as icons bloomed like deadly constellations. "Contacts confirmed," said Commander Zahir. 1,000, maybe 1,200 Concord ships. Multiple flagships. They're broadcasting peace terms. Mara didn't blink. Terms? Zahir read from the console. "Surrender your colonies, surrender your fleets, surrender Earth for occupation." Mara exhaled slowly. "Of course they are." The hollow projector flickered. Chancellor Rithkal's image appeared, translucent, wings folded in ritual posture. "Captain Cade," he said, his tone sharp with barely restrained fury, "this madness ends now. You have terrorized the galaxy long enough. Surrender peacefully, and the Concord will." Mara cut him off. "Chancellor," she said softly, "look behind you." He hesitated, his mandibles twitching. Then the hollow feed expanded, showing the space behind his flagship. The void shimmered with faint, golden light. Not from human weapons. From the Nemesis arrays awakening in the deep. Thousands of small, silent shapes emerged from subspace. Not ships, but sentinels. Drones the size of towers, forged from black alloys that reflected no stars. Each one carried the old Terran emblem, a single white star within a black circle. The forgotten children of humanity's darkest age. They spread through the system like ghosts. No sound. No signal. Just the cold inevitability of something built for finality. "Those aren't ours," Zahir whispered. "They're old war machines. Ancient." Mara nodded. They heard the signal. They came home. The Concord fleet began to scatter, panic rippling through formations. Some fired preemptively, bolts of plasma ripping across the void. The Sentinels didn't dodge. The energy vanished into their hulls like drops of rain into the ocean. Then the Sentinels began to glow. From orbit it looked like sunrise. Each Nemesis drone released a flare of white fire, pure energy drawn from folded singularities. Not a weapon, not destruction, light. A controlled detonation that ionized the local space, erasing all active targeting systems. In moments, the Concord fleet was blind. Their weapons faltered. Their navigation died. Entire ships drifted in confusion. Mara watched from the Resolute's bridge as the chaos unfolded. "They're not attacking," she said softly. "They're warning them." Zahir turned toward her. "Warning? They're dismantling half the fleet's systems." She shook her head. "No casualties reported. The Nemesis units are disabling, not killing." On the comm screen, Rithkal shouted in disbelief as his flagship's power grid shut down. "You think this will make us yield, human? We will rebuild." Mara's gaze hardened. "You're missing the point. We didn't send them." The Chancellor froze. "What?" "They woke themselves," she said quietly. "The machines we built to end our last war remembered the beacon. They remembered the order to protect humanity, and they're following it, with or without us." The view outside turned surreal. The entire sky seemed alive, rippling with lines of energy as the Nemesis Sentinels synchronized into a vast lattice. Through the red haze of the Helios star, they began projecting holographic images, ancient footage, historical data for every ship, every world in range to see. The fall of Luna. The fires of Mars. The extinction-level collapse of the Void War. Billions of alien soldiers watched, horrified, as they saw what humans had done to survive. Whole moons turned into shipyards. Oceans drained for fuel. The birth of Nemesis, AIs that swore to never forget human pain. Rithkal whispered, You burned your own worlds to win." Mara's voice was barely audible. "We had no choice. You never do when extinction looks you in the eye." One by one, Concord captains began to shut down their weapons. Some even broadcast surrender codes. A few still fought, terrified, irrational, but their weapons failed, their systems fried by the Nemesis grid. The human fleet didn't fire a single shot. The only weapon was truth. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Concord saw humanity not as conquerors, but survivors. Then, without warning, The Helios star flared, massive coronal ejections bursting across the system. Sensors screamed. The energy field was collapsing. Zahir's voice rose. The star's destabilizing. Nemesis is overloading the corona. Mara's eyes widened. They're purging the orbit. They're clearing the battlefield. Captain. Order all ships to retreat, she barked.
Now.
The fleet pulled away, engines flaring. On the holoscreen, Rithkal's flagship tried to move, but its drives were dead. The Chancellor looked at her, desperation finally replacing arrogance. Help us, he shouted. Mara hesitated. Then she opened a comm channel. This is Captain Mara Cade of the Terran Union. Disengage your reactors and vent your drive cores. I'll guide you out manually. Rithkal stared at her, stunned. After all we've done. We're angry, Chancellor, she said. Not monsters. Minutes later, the Resolute's tractor beams locked onto the disabled Concorde flagship, pulling it through the turbulent plasma. The bridge crew worked in silence, sweat beading under red emergency lights. Every second, the star flared brighter. At the last possible moment, they cleared the corona. Behind them, the Nemesis grid collapsed in on itself, folding into a singular burst of energy. The flare reached its peak, a wave of blinding white that rolled across the void. And when it faded, the entire system was empty. No wreckage, no debris, only the faint outline of burned space where arrogance once stood. Hours later, in the quiet of orbit, Rithkal stood aboard the Resolute's observation deck beside Mara Cade. His exoskeleton was scorched, his pride in ruins. You could have let us die, he said. I know. Why didn't you? Mara looked out toward the dim red star, still flickering like an ember. Because that's what you would have done. We're not like you, Chancellor. That's what you never understood. Rithkal's voice trembled. What are you? She turned her gaze toward him. Calm, distant, utterly human. The reason your gods fear the dark, she said. The reminder that kindness has limits. Far across the galaxy, as news of Helios Reach spread, every Concorde capital world fell silent. Some fleets mutinied. Others sued for peace. And the Nemesis network, its duty fulfilled, dissolved into the stars, leaving only quiet. For the first time in living memory, the universe held its breath. Humanity had shown mercy, and that terrified them more than vengeance ever could. The galaxy was quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that followed screams and thunder and light so bright it burned itself into the walls of space. Where once the Concorde fleets drifted in perfect formation, only wreckage remained, orbiting dead suns and shattered moons. Irith Prime, the seat of galactic civilization, had gone dark, its crystalline towers split open like the bones of a colossal beast. What wasn't vaporized now drifted as dust, reflecting starlight like a funeral pyre frozen in time. And through that silence came a single ship, the Terran Union vessel Resolute. Mara Cade stood at the viewport, her reflection a ghost overlaying the ruins. Behind her, crew members worked without a word. The lights of their consoles flickered against their pale faces, but none of them spoke. Transmission received, said Lieutenant Ibarra quietly. It's from what's left of the Concorde. They're asking for terms of surrender. Mara didn't turn. Her eyes stayed on the twisted wreckage of the capital. Terms, she repeated, her voice low, distant. We didn't come here for conquest. The lieutenant hesitated. Then, what should I tell them, Captain? Mara exhaled, slow and weary, the kind of breath that comes after too many ghosts. Tell them this, she said. There are no terms. There's only memory. We'll leave them to it. In the ruins below, Chancellor Rithkal's command center had been reduced to a hollow sphere of melted alloy and exposed nerves of crystal. The alien himself, somehow still alive, watched from his emergency refuge deep underground. His aides trembled in the half-light, clutching broken instruments. The air stank of ozone and ash. Why, Rithkal whispered, voice rasping. Why didn't they stop when we yielded? An older aide, one of the few who dared speak, replied softly. They did stop, Chancellor. You're still breathing. Across the galactic network, silent transmissions began to ripple. Ghost signals, relays lighting up one by one as human vessels withdrew. No declarations, no victory messages. Just coordinates and evacuation notices. Humanity requests no pursuit. Entire sectors fell quiet in response. Worlds that had once mocked Terrans now whispered stories of kinetic strikes that folded space, of fleets vanishing in seconds, of worlds sterilized not by malice, but by precision. And in every story, there was one phrase. They said, "Please don't make us mad." Mara walked the silent halls of the Resolute. The air hum had faded, the ship's reactor idling at half power. She passed the memorial wall, names etched in gold light, spanning from the Void Wars to the Battle of Irith. Her fingers brushed the glass over a familiar name, Commander Renhale. Her old commander, the man who'd taught her what those words really meant. "Anger's easy," he once told her. "But rage? Rage is what happens when you care too much for too long and nobody listens." She looked up at the stars. "They'll listen now," she murmured. In the aftermath, the Concord splintered. Some species sought alliances with humanity, desperate for protection. Others hid, fearing a wrath that might return without warning. But Earth went quiet. No parades. No banners. No speeches of triumph. Humanity retreated behind its solar walls, rebuilding in silence. Its colonies turned inward, its fleets stood down. The galaxy's new apex predator simply rested. And that terrified everyone more than the war ever did. Decades later, at a border outpost orbiting the wreck of Irith Prime, a group of alien archaeologists picked through the remains. One of them, a young scholar with bioluminescent skin, found a human plaque sealed in a fragment of hull plating. The letters were burned, but still legible. "We ask nicely." The scholar trembled, the glow of her skin dimming. "They warned us," she whispered. Her mentor nodded gravely. "And we laughed." The younger one looked toward the cold stars, voice shaking. "Do you think they'll come back?" The mentor sighed, eyes glinting. "Only if we make them mad again." On the far edge of the Milky Way, a Terran ship drifted among nebulae. Engines cold, crew asleep in cryo. At its heart, a beacon pulsed quietly, broadcasting a single line into the void. "Humanity is at peace. Please let it stay that way." And so the galaxy obeyed. Not out of respect, not out of fear, but because it had learned, too late, what it meant when humans said,